we used to have way more below zero days, right? And we really don't anymore. Not like we used to. In the Twin Cities, we average 22 in a winter, but every winter is different. And, of course, up north they get a lot more than that, but even up there, we just don't get the extreme cold like we used to.
What did the average used to be in the Twin Cities, Pete?
It's a good question. I always remember it being around 30. But that could be a couple normal periods ago. Every 10 years we recalculate the normals. So, right now it's 22, but it used to be higher, for sure.
And we're seeing more of a decrease further north, are we not?
Yeah, the fastest warming in the winter is definitely in northern Minnesota, where not only does it fall below zero less frequently than it used to, but those extremes aren't as common either. So, 40 below, 35 below. Those are temperatures that used to be pretty common in northern and especially far northern Minnesota, and they're becoming, increasingly anyway, they're becoming rare. Do you recall any winters recently that were kind of like what we're talking about? Good old-fashioned cold?
Yeah, well, 13, 14, we had 53 at or below zero nights in the Twin Cities, and I never thought that could happen again, so it did. So we can still get cold.
And I believe that winter up around the Gunflint Trail, we had 100 nights that hit zero or lower.
It's a lot.
Do you all remember the 2018-19 winter? Anyone want to recount that one for our audience here?
All I remember is when in February of 2019, when they plowed the snow, the Priuses would do this, back and forth on the ledges of the snow after they plowed through.
Maybe a month before that, we had.
Oh, there was no winter before it.
We had the polar vortex incident.
The big polar vortex.
That was the one day in my 8 years living here that my car wouldn't start.
Oh.
We actually got down to below minus 30 here in the metro. And wind chills were even minus 50.
I think we hit a low of negative 28.
Negative 28.
But we had negative 55 wind chill.
Yeah, it was cold. That was
and
cold.
So, that was brutal. Do you remember what it was like in mid-January?
No snow on the ground. Thought winter was over. Put a fork in it. It's done. All right, we thought it was over.
So minus 28 at MSP. It was minus 31 on my balcony.
I love it.
With my minimum thermometer, but
did you have a sling psychrometer too?
No,
to get
I did not.
No.
I noticed that the question's actually about below zero days. What about days that stay below zero when the high temperature doesn't even hit zero?
It seems like almost every winter we get one of those. One little episode, at least a day or two, in the Twin Cities. Oh, it's a different story, of course, up north. They'd laugh at us saying, you don't know what winter is.
You get about 20 of them in International Falls.
Yes.
Right?
So what everybody always starts, the counter starts running, how many hours below zero, at or below zero, and it's been a long time since we had multiple days below zero. Once you get up to about 4 or 5 days of staying below zero, then you're starting to talk.
And that's when people start kind of complaining.
Yes.
They don't miss winter anymore.
No.
But I find that they're actually quite pleasant days because they're usually situations where we have high pressure and it's very clear, blue skies, sunny, crisp.
Yeah.
And I'd take that over minus 10 and a 20 mile per hour wind.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, it's worth mentioning that it doesn't just get cold. It almost always arrives on the wind. And so when you get a cold outbreak, usually the first day, wind, cold,
snow.
what Luigi's talking about. And then the coldest day is usually, pretty calm. You can move into the center of that high pressure, and the coldest day is usually light winds, if any winds, clear skies. Yeah, I remember when you came here, you were saying those were the most beautiful days. You were looking forward to them.
It's quiet, you're walking, you can hear the snow crunching under your boots.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we really getting less snow, or does it just feel that way? So we're actually, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you here. So we're actually, the trends are showing that we're actually getting more snow. And there's actually a pretty good explanation for that. And the reason is that the amount of moisture that the atmosphere can hold is dependent on the temperature. The warmer the temperature, the more moisture the atmosphere can actually hold. And so we're actually removing a lot of the really, really cold days where it can't really snow, or where the probability for it to snow is really, really low, like -20 and colder. It can snow when it's that cold, but the probability of it is just so low because there's so little moisture in the atmosphere. And we're replacing those with days where the probability for snow is actually higher. And so we're having a lot of these warmer, still cold winter days, but warmer cold winter days, where the probability for snow is actually higher. So we're actually getting more snow, but we're not retaining it. We're having more midwinter melts. And so, we'll get a dump of snow and it'll melt, and then we'll get another dump of snow and it'll melt.
Yeah, and what we've even seen is that at stations across Minnesota, the days that have snow, so this is exactly what you're saying, the days that have snow are warmer than they used to be. And also, as we lose those really cold days where it's either hard to snow, or if it snows at all, you don't get very much, we're actually replacing them with days where there's more snow falling per day. So what we've seen across the state is there might not be as many days in a winter where snow falls, but the average snowfall on a day with snow is higher than it used to be. So like Luigi said, basically most of the state's getting snowier, even though it might not seem that way because you're not keeping the snow on the ground.
And if it does snow on those really cold days, we just get that diamond dust.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be in the Twin Cities, we have 100 days of an inch of snow cover in a season, and 24 days of a foot of snow on the ground. That was the old, what you're used to. Getting a foot of snow on the ground is another level because that's playable snow. You can snowmobile, you can do anything you want in it. And those have been going down. Like you said, it just won't stay, it melts away. So we just don't get that snowpack like we used to.
What does warmer winters mean for our lakes, fish, and wildlife? I mean, we can start with the obvious because I'm not a fisheries or wildlife expert, although we've worked with some folks who are. If we have a warmer winter, and obviously there's no, we kind of joke about there's no such thing as average. We have these numerical averages, but the average conditions don't really ever happen. And that's true when we talk about warmer winters. There's no sort of typical warmer winter. But if you do look at the average where we have a later period of first freeze, so those are coming up to 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And then the final freeze of spring is tending to come 1 to 2 weeks earlier, sometimes even more. So we have parts of Minnesota where the freeze season, and this is just air temperatures, are 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks shorter than they used to be. If you apply that to everything else, what it means is, longer growing season, or at least more ability for things to grow longer. But then on the lakes, it would imply, and we see this in the data, a shorter freeze-over season. So, this is something Pete and Lou know a lot about. We have basically a shorter ice season on Minnesota lakes. On average, we've lost pretty close to 2 weeks over the last 50-some years. And so what that means is a shorter period of recreation, more dangerous ice conditions, and we always need to stress
Careful on the ice,
ice
right?
is never 100% safe anyway.
Careful.
But obviously if you have a shorter season, then maybe periods that used to seem less dangerous are maybe more dangerous now than they were. What do you all think?
Yeah, it's we're losing the ends. The later in the fall, earlier in the spring, so shorter ice duration. You still can get out there. The lakes still freeze over. So far, we've never had a season where the lake stayed open the whole year, so we haven't gotten there yet. But some years have been pretty short, and that cuts out the ice fishing and when you can go on the lakes, of course.
Yeah, we're also seeing with the midwinter melts, ponding of water onto the frozen lakes, and that can actually compromise the mechanical strength of the ice. And so what you can get is these layers of white ice that build up in between the layers of the black ice. And you really need to factor that in when considering the thickness of the ice and what is considered safe.
Yeah, I'm looking at this picture from the conservation volunteer. That's White Bear Lake.
It's 2 feet thick.
That is some beautiful ice.
So
I
this
mean,
is-
so
it's still got beautiful
so what
ice.
Lou's talking about is the tendency to form, less clear ice that's of a lower
Clear
structure.
ice is stronger than white. Yep.
Yeah.
Wild winter swings, 50 degrees one moment, -10 the next. Is that part of climate change? Well, I guess that's a tough question because you'd have to look at them in a whole pot of many events like that to see if there's a trend. And that's a good one. Are there trends in wild winter swings? We've always had wild winter swings in Minnesota. That's, go back to 1940, Armistice Day blizzard was a classic example of a wild swing.
Say more.
Say
What's
more?
the Armistice Day blizzard?
The Armistice Day blizzard, 85 years ago, huge blizzard in November. It was in the 50s in southeast Minnesota, and then a blizzard came, knocked the temperature down by 40 degrees. It had 3 inches of liquid, which is one of the biggest snowstorms we've ever seen in the state that we've been able to measure. And a lot of people lost their lives because a lot of deer hunters went out. That hunting was really good for ducks. They're flying out ahead of the storm. So that's an example of a swing, and we've had lots of examples of that. So I guess one thing to think about it is, are we having more winter thawings and then refreezing? Think about roads and potholes. Is that getting worse? That's a good question. Are we getting more January thaws? I guess is the quick answer. And I don't know. Are we getting more January thaws?
The data's actually not super conclusive
Yeah.
about that because even though January is warming a lot, I know Iowa State helped look at this issue. It doesn't appear that, however you define a thaw day, that we're having more of these freeze-thaw cycles. But what appears to be happening is that our thaws are so much more extreme.
That's true.
In the 2023-2024 winter, we had a January thaw, which is normal. We almost always get a
Yep.
January
Yep.
thaw,
Just about
but we had it lasted 24 days. It was so long it went into February. And that's the kind of thing, that's a really extreme thaw. And then, of course, coming out on the other side of that, you can have a pretty severe freeze. But I guess my response would be that, like Pete said, the big swings during winter are part of the climate. They always have been. What's different now is sometimes on the high side of that, the warm side of
Yeah.
that, we're just pushing temperatures to levels that we didn't used to have very much, if at all.
Yeah, difficult question to answer in a climate that is by nature extreme.
Yep.
Yeah, right. It is.
Far away from any ocean, about as far away as you can get.
Yeah, so we get-
modifying water.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the hard things about trying to detect which things are new and which things have always been there, is that we have a naturally wild climate with a lot of extremes and a lot of hazards. And so understanding if some kind of behavior that you're interested in is actually different or has changed requires really looking at what the past state of that type of behavior looked like, and then seeing if what you're observing now is different. And in terms of the big swings, again, what looks most different now is the fact that we just get warm in a way during the winter that we didn't used to. And so it's kind of like the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so then when we come off of one of those soaring high temperature episodes, the other side of that can be a rude awakening for Minnesotans.
If it still feels cold, how can winters be warming if we still get blizzards? And this, again, plays into that same concept that the more you raise the temperature, the more you increase the probability, or the ability rather, for the atmosphere to hold moisture. And so our winters aren't going anywhere. They're going to look different as our climate continues to change. We're still going to have snow. We're still going to have cold days. Blizzards typically occur. They like temperatures where it's just slightly below freezing. where there's a lot of moisture in the air, mixing with dry air masses and being pushed up high in the atmosphere where you get a lot of lift, and that's not going to change. We're still going to get blizzards in a warming climate.
I always say there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. If you're feeling cold, dress for the weather. That's the quick. You can be
Yeah.
cold in Florida, you know.
Well,
you go
also-
down to Florida in April and it's 50 degrees, they're freezing to death.
Also,
right?
let's admit, you know, we're talking about something that shows up numerically,
Yeah.
statistically. Oh, it doesn't get to 35 below
Yeah.
as frequently as it used to. Or now, instead of being 35, it's 27 below. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just admit, if I'm outside, I can't tell the difference in the air. If I'm just feeling the air and I'm not looking at my phone, I don't know what the actual temperature is, I'm not going to be able to make a good guess. So I think the point is, it can still feel really cold. I mean, even if you have the right clothes, there's just a point at which, you know, we still get cold enough that it can hurt a person.
Yeah.
We still get cold enough that if you don't have the right gloves or the right head covering or the right jacket, you might end up injured or worse.
Yep.
But it's still, that doesn't mean it's not warming. These are still less severe conditions than they used to
Yeah.
be. And I think that's a hard thing for people to kind of grasp sometimes, because the numbers are real. They are measurements of how warm the air is, and we know that the air is warmer than it used to be on our coldest winter days. But it's still dangerously cold on those cold winter days, right? And so you can, you know, if you make the wrong preparations, you can be in trouble.
Yep.
And blizzards?
Oh, blizzards. Yeah, I mean, well,
get
so
blizzards.
what you were talking about before, we're actually getting more snow.
Yeah.
So
We still get blizzards.
yeah, absolutely. We've had some dandy blizzards
Yeah,
in the
last 5 years we've had a couple
several
good
years.
ones. Yeah.
I think, you know, all it takes is a good low pressure system, bringing in that cold enough air for snow with plenty of moisture, of which now there's more, and you can make the arrangements for a nice blizzard.
What about the temperature during a blizzard? We typically don't get blizzards when it's minus 25.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Typically.
yes.
But our worst blizzards,
Ooh, worst blizzards. Oh,
the
how much
Halloween
time do we got?
blizzard was in October.
Which one?
Armistice. Halloween.
Armistice was the
That
Halloween.
was in November.
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
we had one. What was it? 20.
Was it Thunder Blizzard?
Thunder
the
Blizzard
Thunder
2018 in April?
In April. So
Yeah.
Oh, we could talk all day on
you know,
blizzards.
those aren't the heart of winter days. So as our winter is warming, we're actually probably increasing the probability of blizzards here.
Yeah, and we should mention those blizzards, those famous ones,
Yeah.
world famous, or
World famous.
yeah.
At least for us.
Yeah,
it's
it's kind of like
famous.
the world's famous burgers. Everyone
Yeah,
says
everybody's
they got,
got the
but
best
it's like
burger.
you've never heard of it.
Yes.
But yeah, our sort of most notorious blizzards, the ones that we're talking about, Halloween blizzard, Armistice Day, Thunder Blizzard, the Dome Buster.
Yes.
These are heavy snowfall events. We also have this other kind of blizzard that is more of a
Yep.
midwinter creature up on the Red River Valley out in southwest Minnesota, southern Minnesota, where you don't get very much snow. And we still get, cold fronts.
Yep.
We still get, again, it still gets plenty cold. So you can get those ground blizzards. You grew up with ground blizzards,
I did.
right? Because Luigi's from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Ground blizzard central.
Wool lined pants.
Yeah,
Yep. Swear by them.
5 mil.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
There's some warm, thick pants there. Yeah. Could Minnesota ever lose its winter identity? So, a couple things that aren't changing. The amount of sunlight that we get during winter and the sun angle really is not changing in an appreciable way. So, what that means is the astronomical forces that drive our seasons aren't changing. So, winter will always be a very dark time of year, and we'll always end up with access to cold air. We haven't yet had a year with no ice on the lakes. but that might happen. It's not necessarily right around the corner.
We've always been below zero in the Twin Cities too.
Yeah,
We
we've
came
At or
close
below
a
zero.
few times.
Came
Yeah,
close.
right. Yeah,
We always
so
had at least one.
Don't sell your snowmobiles.
I just bought a snowblower. What does
Don't-
that mean? Am I in trouble?
Yeah, I think winters are going to look a little different, but we still have access to the cold, as Kenny said. The polar front isn't going anywhere. The probability for the snow is always going to be there. It's just going to be slightly different. We're gonna have to come to terms with the fact that these midwinter melts are going to be more frequent. They're going to last longer, and it's going to change a little bit of how we see winter.
If the ice caps melt and the cold water goes into the oceans, will that change the ocean circulation and trigger a mini ice age? Well, there was even a movie about that. A little extreme, I'll say. But it's an interesting idea. Ocean currents matter, so that's out of my world, though. I have to say, Minnesota. I don't deal much with ocean currents, I'm afraid. So I don't know. I don't know much about how much ice would you have to melt to change the currents. That's.
There's some research that's been going on for the past several years suggesting that already the currents in the North Atlantic are slowing down, and the concern is that they would shut down. And the reason that that's important is because the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Current, those are the sort of engines that drive really warm tropical air into Northern Europe, and that's why England is so much warmer. It's way farther north than we are, but it's one of the reasons Northern Europe is so much warmer than you would expect based on its latitude. If that shut down, that would have some impacts on the climate because it would change the delivery of warm air in that region, and it's not clear what would replace it. I think one of the reasons that this idea that it would trigger an ice age is there's not enough evidence yet to support it, is because when numerical models sort of simulate that happening, you get every scenario possible. So some of them show that there's an initial influx of much colder air into Northern Europe, and then that increases the amount of snowfall in Siberia, which then makes these sort of polar vortex events more likely and does bring some cold air in. But then there's other ones that show that loss of really warm air actually sort of moderates the prevailing weather systems there and makes it harder for cold fronts to come farther south. So there's a lot of different scenarios. So I don't know if there's an easy answer to that. In terms of polar ice melting, though, that's already underway. The Arctic is, it's not every year, but the Arctic Ocean routinely will record, a lower amount of sea ice than had ever been recorded at a particular time of year. And so those changes are underway. The total ramification for our climate or for the global climate is a little up in the air. And I would just say, beware the sort of very worst case scenario or the Hollywood finish.
Yeah, I suppose.
Because those often are less attached to the science than some of the more plausible scenarios. How do you respond to if someone says, it's really cold this week, where's your climate change now?
Let's see, I'm trying to think of the context they'd be asking me that.
They're
but,
asking you because
it's cold this week,
it's
right?
cold this week.
I could use a lot of comparisons. Isn't weather what you're wearing today, but climate is what's in your closet?
Oh, gosh.
I could do, weather is the car you drive, but climate's all the traffic. So whatever is happening right now doesn't necessarily mean what's going on with the climate. There's a lot of variables going in there.
The variability doesn't prove or disprove trends.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at trends on a long term. You're going to get colder than normal years in a warming climate. You're going to get more warmer than normal years in a warming climate, but you're still going to get colder than normal years in a warming climate. You're going to get colder than normal days during those years, whether it's a warmer than normal year or a colder than normal year.
Yeah. I mean, I think when people are asking that question, they're often, the question being, you know, if it's cold, how can we have climate change, or how can we have a warming climate if it's so cold this week? I think one of the things that they're saying, which is what you're both talking about, is they're kind of confusing weather with climate. On the other hand, like, climate is really just made of weather, right? I mean, and so I think it can be a sort of legitimate question, and we don't want to dismiss it out of hand because, yeah, sure, so the weather doesn't always line up with the climate. And I think one of the points is that the fact that our, say, winters are getting warmer, there's nothing in the statements that we make that says it will never be cold again.
That's right.
Right? There isn't any scientific evidence suggesting that, you know, the temperature therefore will never fall below freezing or fall below zero. It's really the frequency of these things is decreasing, which is a boring way of saying it doesn't get as cold as it used to, as frequently as it used to. And I think, you know, I mean, honestly, a lot of times if someone says that, they don't even care what you're gonna, how you're gonna respond. They just want to bait you. But we do kind of need to have good responses for these questions. We get things like that all the time.
So what you're saying is, weather is the song you're listening
Oh my
to.
gosh, yeah.
And climate is your playlist.
Your whole playlist, yeah.
Are Minnesota winters getting warmer? I always like to say they're not getting warmer, they're getting less colder. And that's because our winters warming is driven by the fact that our overnight lows are increasing over time, and that's what's really driving our winter warming. So we take two temperatures during the day, the maximum temperature, which is the warmest temperature of the day, and the minimum temperature, which is the coldest temperature of the day. We average the two to get the average temperature. And if we increase the minimum temperature, the needle where the average temperature occurs actually increases. So yes, our winters are getting warmer. We're seeing this across the state. I know you have a lot to say on this.
Oh, I was just going to say yes. Yes, our winters are getting warmer. Pete.
Let's tie it in the snow cover. If you have a snow cover, you're going to have a colder winter. You have no snow cover, warmer winter. So that's the key overall. Overnight minimums, overall temperatures. You know, that nice white cover of snow reflects the solar radiation right up into the atmosphere, and you know, you're just going to be colder with the white covering instead of a dark ground or something like that. You absorb the solar radiation. So, yeah, that's the big part of it.
It's true. It makes a difference of about 10 degrees. If you don't have snow on the ground,
Or patchy snow.
yeah, if you don't have snow on the ground versus having some snow on the ground, the difference can be 10 degrees. So part of that trend also that we're seeing is that if it's warm and not snowy, then we get a really warm winter. More so than the winters that are just, you know, snowy but warmer than they used to be. So it's a big driver of what we're seeing in these average temperatures. Are we going to get 60 below ever again in Minnesota in our lifetimes? So the current low temperature record, all-time low temperature record for Minnesota is -60. Are we going to break that temperature record in your careers or in the lives of anyone watching?
No, I think that we have a shot.
Say
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yes.
I think we could get extreme cold. I mean, we still have, you know, a lot of frozen tundra north of us in the winter. So the chances we could get extreme cold again is definitely possible. I wouldn't say it's
60 below? Are we
60 below would be hard. It'd be difficult.
We're going to break our all-time
Yeah,
low
that would be
temperature
hard.
record
That'd
in
be-
Minnesota?
I'm not saying impossible. It'd be very difficult. I can say this though, universal. Kids are always excited for snow, the first snow. Parents, not as much sometimes. That's one thing that's always been the same. First snow is always exciting for kids.
All right. So to answer your question, I'm going to ask a question.
Oh, wow.
I love those. That could go on forever, you know.
We're not ending.
So we're breaking a lot of records in our weather with, daily highs or measures where it's actually warmer or wetter, but we're still breaking records on the low end every now and then.
Pretty rare these days.
Right, but it's still happening, right? So I think minus 60 is in play.
Okay.
What do you think, Kenny?
I don't think negative 60 will get broken with a calibrated, well-behaved thermometer or temperature sensor
Fake thermometer?
during my career,
Okay.
which is another 15 years. And I think after that, the odds go down even more. So this might be one for the record books. And the reason I said that, it was in that 2019 cold outbreak, we had a negative 56 reported at Cotton.
And it was fake.
And it's not fake,
It was
but it was
in error.
Yeah, it was an error.
Yes,
it wasn't. It was
Ooh, that's
probably
a good
Probably
question.
more like 51. So the last time we were close wasn't real.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something to think about. Boy, there's a lot to unpack there with that.
But I like your idea though. I mean, we are still occasionally having a morning be colder than that morning had ever been recorded, and
Right.
so.
Well, we need super deep snow.
So is there going to be a time when we're not breaking low temperature records anymore? And when would it be?
It'll be hard to do it in the Twin Cities.
I would never bet against the polar front. And with our changing climate, with reductions in permafrost in the Canadian Arctic and in the Russian Arctic, all across the rim of the Arctic Ocean, is going to have a dramatic effect on the variability of the Rossby waves within our global circulation in the northern hemisphere. And I think the chance of these extreme troughs that bring really cold temperatures could bring us some really cold temperatures at times.
Yeah, and now you're going to have to draw a finger picture of a Rossby wave.
Well, there's three factors that'll break your 60 below. Location, location, location. The reason why it's set in the first
Notice
place.
I wasn't giving you any of that.
You weren't going to give me that back, were you? So to get the minus 60, it was in a low spot up north, deep snow, thermometer. I mean, the snow is really deep. So as the snow gets deeper, your observation height's 5.5 feet. So if you have 3.5 feet of snow, now you only have a space of this far between your temperature. Cold air settles on the surface of the snow. A lot of things would come together to break that record. And if you have the right observer in the right place in a low spot, you could do it.
Enough snow and an amazingly cold air mass.
Amazingly cold air mass. We're talking tough, cold air mass. But yeah, you could probably do
I
it.
mean, we did it in 1996.
So Kenny, I want you to move to tower, rural tower, find a low spot, become a cooperative observer, and then we can do it.